All right, from the world of storytelling, it's now time for some suspense. May I call on stage Dr. Kalpana Swaminathan and Ms. Deepanjana Pal to stage for a masterclass, Synapse to Murder by Kalpish Ratna, transforming fact into fiction. A big round of applause for them as I invite them on stage. Yes, sir. Now can we give a warm welcome to our panelists? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. From the complete silence, I'm going to assume you can hear me. You've just heard Kalpana's official bio. The less official version is that she's got a masterclass for you, and I can't think of a more fun person to talk about murder, because she does happen to be a doctor who you would think makes it perfect for a murder situation. This masterclass, the intro for which is just this. The synapse is where thought begins, and murder is the death of thought. Now, I'm going to hand it over to you, but I hope you're going to explain both the idea of the synapse and the idea of the thought that is being murdered.
Thank you so much, Deepanjana. Let me start by saying how delighted I am to discover at the last moment that the hall is 3/4 full of people who are below 16. So a very hearty welcome to all you young men and women. And I'm also a little startled because what I had planned to say was meant really for your moms and dads. So I'm going to switch everything I had planned to say, throw it all out of the window, and just start talking straight to you. I do have a slideshow, but I'm completely at sea about how I'm going to manipulate it because I don't have any of those tick-ticks given to me yet. So I thought we'd just talk.
I think that's coming.
Oh, it's coming. When it comes, we'll start that. But meanwhile, since you guys are all doing science, yes, what do I do? Oh, okay. Okay, तो वो आ गया है. तो ये आगे और वो पीछे. Right. Now, since you guys all are doing science, you are familiar with the word synapse, right? Okay. Again, from the profound silence, I know that you are. Well, within your brain, there are 100 trillion synapses. And these are all the spaces between your nerve cells. But outside of your brain, all around us, we exist also in a space which is called the synapse, which is the space between you, your thoughts, and something that's going to happen. So, a synapse is really the place where all thought begins. Now look at this picture, which I think has appeared on the screen. You can see the tops of 4 skyscrapers there. And there is a blue space, which is the sky, and emptiness between these. Can you see the picture? Yeah? Okay, thanks. Now, supposing you were looking at these 4 rooftops, and you were standing, say, about 250 feet beneath them, because these are very tall skyscrapers, you might be looking up at a synapse, which is an empty space between 4 people or 4 places that might actually be in conversation. And while you were watching, supposing you happen to witness one man push another off these roofs, would you be standing in a synapse to murder? That is a question that today we are going to consider. And I want you to consider the word murder, which is a barbaric, inhuman, terrible end to human existence. And life is the most precious thing that we have. And when you're in the synapse, you strain to preserve it, and you strain against the very thought of murder. Having said that and introduced the word and the idea of synapse to you, let's go a little further. This is actually what a synapse looks like. You can see two nerve cells, and you can see something shiny which is bouncing in the space between them. So that shows you that the synapse is not empty. It's full of some kind of stuff. And when you look at the stuff, do you know what the stuff consists of? Chemicals, poisons, toxins, stuff that could still your heart. That is murder, isn't it? It's also, Synapse is the name of our new book. And Kalpish Ratna is two people, Ishrat Sayyed and Kalpana. Ishrat regrettably couldn't come, so you just have me. And I'm going to talk to you now as one person speaking for two people. Now look at this picture of the forest. You can see that treetops waving. And this is really what we carry within our skulls. It's an arboretum or a branching. And at the tips of these branches are thoughts. And if you look at this composite, you'll see that behind these branches is a changing sky. So the idea is that we exist in a space which is constantly changing. When we are about to experience something, we change too. Now I've thought that it would be nice to share with you some of the things that happened within a synapse and the things that we wrote about, because we do write crime fiction. I have a detective. She's called Lalli. And when I started writing about her, she was a very old woman in her mid-60s, and now I'm a very old woman and the same age as her, and I'm still writing about her. And Kalpish Ratna has two detectives, and they're all the same person. I have a person called Ratan Oak, who becomes the persona of his great-grandfather sometimes. So let me tell you the first story that I'm going to tell you. Now here, you can see the 3 bullet holes. Now, you probably know that on the 26th of November, 2008, Bombay was swarmed by terrorists who attacked the city. And this is a photograph of one of the places where the attack took place. This is Leopold Cafe. Now, when we visited this cafe about a week after this attack took place, and we looked at these bullet holes, and we knew that this is where something terrible had happened, it seemed to us that we were connecting the name of the cafe with the actual event of 26/11. The name of the cafe, Leopold Cafe, commemorates Leopold of Belgium, who is known as the butcher of the Congo. Everybody had forgotten the story of Leopold. It was called Leopold Cafe for almost 50 years. Nobody remembered him till this event occurred, and the place was again the site of carnage. But when we looked at these 3 bullet holes, it seemed to us that there was something beyond it, which is really what I want to talk to you about, because you're not here. And in this, I'm excluding the children. I'm talking to the writers who are present. We are not here because we want to talk about murder, or we want to write about it, or read about it. We are here simply because we are writers. And we exist always within the space, which is the synapse. It is within this space that we lose all powers to tolerate things. We become so sensitive and on the edge of explosion that it compels us to write. Let's take a look at what can happen let's take a closer look at the synapse, and I'm going to tell you probably the best description of the synapse that I have read, the synapse to murder. And here it is. Between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion, all the interim is as a phantasma or a hideous dream. The genius and the mortal instruments are then in council, and the mind of man, like to a little kingdom, undergoes the nature of an insurrection. This insurrection is where we writers thrive. We inhabit this hideous dream. If we did not, this is what might happen. The incident I'm about to narrate occurred perhaps, I think about 5 or 6 years ago. It happened, I think, again in Ranchi. And you see, all these interludes are important. I think maybe you'll know why soon. A college student murdered his girlfriend by beheading her with a sword on the steps of the college. When the police arrived, they found the body was ringed by college students who were photographing the headless corpse on their mobiles. I don't know if any of you remember this incident, but it's a fact. It's a fact which was forgotten because there was no synapse. You did not exist within that moment. So to return you to the bullet holes of Leopold Cafe, when a writer is confronted with an incident and you enter that state of consciousness which enables you to write, your writing may have nothing at all to do with the incident. As with us in this particular story, it didn't. We entered the site of carnage, which confirmed its reputation for carnage. But the story we wrote was one about immortality. And there's no understanding why that story came about. The story was based on a fact, long remembered, a memory. But the story itself was surmise when it was first published. 3 years later, the train of surmise became accepted scientific fact. So within the synapse, that's what happens. You pick up a fact, you turn it into fiction, but the leap continues, and it is possible, perhaps, that you may leap back into a fact. Now, this is a very popular landmark in Bombay, which is the city where we live and we write about. This is Kipling House within JJ School of Art, and it is supposed to be the place where Rudyard Kipling was born. It is not the place where he was born. He was born on a tent on the beach, and he lived in this house perhaps for 3 years before he was shipped off to England, as he tells us in his memoirs. But I'm not going to talk to you about Rudyard Kipling. I'm going to talk to you about his father, Lockwood Kipling, who was principal of this college, and who also wrote a book. And the book was about the relationship between beasts and men in India, and it was called The Beast and Man in India. And this is the frontispiece of that book. On top of this, there are 3 words which says, to the other 3. So it is interpreted as a dedication to his family. So when we looked at this curious picture, we thought, if this is a dedication to his family, what does this picture mean to them? Well, it meant nothing to Lockwood, because he mentions in the preface to his book that, this is a diagram by a Muslim artist. And I think Rudyard says the same. But to us, it was something different. I don't know what it means to you guys. Take a good look at it. What is it? Is it a tiger? Or is it something else? Any guesses? It's a tiger. But is there anything more to the tiger? Could you look at this tiger differently? Yes? Radical Islamic photo. Adada. Why radical? It has nothing to do with Islam. It is calligraphy, as someone else said. Yes, it's a calligraphic message. It's a rebus. It says something. I don't understand why you got the word radical and Islam into it. It's a language, for God's sake. It's not a religion, and there's nothing radical about it. It's a very beautiful message, which I'm now going to read to you. I couldn't read it, Ishrat couldn't read it, so we caught hold of his dad, who read it for us. And it says, actually, I left my notes in my bag there. Maybe I should get it. Could you? Yeah, because I've got the translation written down. But once we read it, something happened to us. A story came into being. The beauty of this message, of course, is the thorn which lies concealed within the stone. It says, could you give me a minute? I'll just find that. You can always, interrupt. If you want to say something while I'm finding that. My bag, can I? Excuse me. My bag. It's there. Just the red brown bag there. This one. No, the other one. This one, thank you. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Okay, I'm going to read out. It says, Qibla Abu Bhakt, most respected child of a fortunate father, Ilahi Hamesha Shagufta Bad, may you always be joyous, like a rose in bloom. Dushnabad Kharegul Ast, although your enemy be with you like the thorn of a rose. But Chashma Kayam Nast, his evil eye will not prevail. Taraddud na shud, O Ajabi, be not anxious, O foreigner. So this is the verse. It's a message, and it's a very common form of poetic expression, which is unfortunately getting lost to us. So when we saw this puzzle, a story came about which solved a very long-standing dilemma for us. We read this in the year 2007, after, for 18 years, having suffered the dilemma of not being able to write about an incident which destroyed the country as we know it, destroyed our city and destroyed our nation, which was on 6 December 1992, the demolition of the Babri Masjid. We looked at the plague of communal hatred that had consumed our city in 1990s, and we didn't know how to write about it. But when we saw this, it came to us that there was the other plague which had ravaged and destroyed our city in the 1890s. And we found a parallel between the plague of communal hatred and the disease which had destroyed Bombay in 1890s. But to our surprise, when we were researching the quarantine papers, we also discovered that the 1890s mirrored incident for incident, event for event, place for place, the same communal incidents which consumed Bombay in 1990. This was archival research which was substantiated by fact. We had fiction which was also based on the fact both of disease and of history. And it allowed us to experience what we had felt completely about an incident that had killed our city.
Kalpana, I'm sorry to
Running out of
interrupt
time?
you. Yes. But before we do, I wanted you to tell us two things. One is a little bit about your new book, because that would be nice to know. But I also wanted to ask you about the fact that, when you're writing fiction, like you were just saying, there's a lot of research that you put into it. And we have often this misconceived notion that when a story is made up, it doesn't require research. It doesn't require process. It just comes, and you can just make up whatever you want. So can you talk a little bit, and unfortunately we are going to have to wrap up very soon, but so can you tell us briefly about the importance that both you and Ishrat place upon research and how that benefits you in your writing?
Okay. Well, most of the stuff that we write is research-based, because we start with a fact before you make the leap into fiction. And you cannot have a fact unless, like the Kipling fact. You know, you go around looking this landmark for half your lifetime, and you say, Rudyard Kipling was born there. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit about that, so I'm going to diverge from everything else. Now, to go back to that slide, you will see that there is a bust which you can barely make out in the veranda of the villa. Now, that is Rudyard Kipling's bust. And when we first went there, we were conducted there by, the staff of the college. And he came with us carrying a marigold garland and agarbatti. And every day, Rudyard has been receiving these garlands and agarbattis for all this time. And so when I asked them, who was he? They said, Koi Mahan Hoga. And then they said also, this college was built by him. So I had to kind of, disabuse them of that notion. So they said, what did he write? So I said, Jungle Book. So immediately the garland fell to the floor. And they said, oh, Cartoon Network? I said, yeah, but then they said, okay, but maybe he wrote other things as well. So I had to do an impromptu translation of The White Man's Burden into Marathi, which was not very good. But then, the musicality of Kipling's verse is so beautiful that though you hate him, you still remember the lines. So it is half devil and half child. It came off pretty well in Marathi as Ardha Shaitan, Ardha Bal. So then they looked at me and they said, 20 years of spending my own money on agarbattis for this. And
I think you murdered some thought there.
Yeah, but this
not just your translation, but your explanation as well. And I see people hovering over there, so I'm going to wrap this up. But thank you so much for telling us all of this. And thank you all of you for listening. And I will see you guys later.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was indeed a wonderful session. Could I now request Editorial Director, Mr. Prabhu Chawla, to please come on stage and present mementos to our panelists. And meanwhile, I'll once again announce, in case you have questions for the Honorable CM for the valedictory ceremony, which is at 6 p.m., please send in your questions to 94385-28844. We have already got a lot of questions. Well, I'll also like to inform that since we have a very tight schedule today, so I'll request the chairpersons, the moderator of each session, to stick to the time schedule, because we have the valedictory ceremony at 6 today, and we want to finish all the sessions on time. Thank you so much.